Welcome back. This is the Technology Supported Collaboration mini course, Lecture 8, Bridging the Vocabulary Gap and Building Common Ground. I'm Joe Constan here with Gary Olson, and we're really here today to talk about how do we take a trio and make them into a team. And this has really been the theme of the entire course, but let's both review and then look in more detail specifically at some of the critical issues. And I guess it's easy to think about this as really just two key concepts. Be aware of where there might be problems and take action in advance to address them.
Right. So we've talked about the kind of potential gaps you might have, things like do you have the same vocabulary? Do you have the same assumptions about how things are going to work? How are you thinking about what kind of credit people are going to get, who's going to own what pieces that come out of this? And trust, we're going to talk about trust in a little bit more detail because it's really important. I talk about trust as being the glue that keeps a team together. And then, what are you going to do about these things? Well, we've talked about the communication covenant, and that's an actual exercise you're going to do, and it'll be quite important. Things like kickoff meetings, face-to-face meetings, unstructured social time, having a regular basis where you check in so you know what everybody's doing, who's got what issues, and so on. All examples of things that can help minimize the problems that can arise from these kind of gaps that we're talking about.
So the one thing we haven't really spent a huge amount of time on is trust. And while I think everybody involved in this program came in assuming that their partners were trustworthy and were people that they could and should trust, research has said a lot more about what we need to know about trust.
Well, trust I view trust as the glue that holds teams together. And what trust is really about is, do I trust you to keep my interests in mind? So for example, if you have a 3-person team and one of you misses a meeting, am I confident that the other 2 are going to look out for my interests and so on? And the thing is that this can get, as you reach critical points in projects or there's obstacles or surprises and so on, that's when trust gets really stressed. And that's why if trust isn't strong, things can really fall apart when you meet surprises. Now, the literature, there's huge literature on the topic of trust, and it says, the kind of buzzword that Charles Handy, a kind of management consultant, used was trust takes touch. That is, you build trust up by face-to-face interactions. And I think there's a lot of evidence that really matters a lot. I mean, there's a lot of effort goes into these kinds of things, trust-building exercises and so on. We actually have done some research on if you can't get together, is there ways of either establishing or maintaining trust at a distance? And the finding we've found from experimental studies is it's having some kind of social interaction. So, we're going to interact a lot about our work, but the kind of thing that can keep trust going is talk about some other things. Talk about, I'm planning this vacation. I'm going to Hawaii. Anybody know anything about Hawaii? What's happening with the baseball team or the basketball team or the hockey team or whatever. Just talk about some other things. And there's actual evidence. A colleague of ours, Jim Herbstad, who's now at Carnegie Mellon, but formerly at Lucent, did some studies of software development teams inside Lucent and really found that those teams that did take some time to just get to know each other and talk about stuff that was going on in their lives were much more successful. And the whole key concept there was trust. So it's really, really important because it is easy, if you're not seeing each other regularly, to assume that if somebody fails to respond, it's because they don't like you. That's a kind of a really well-documented attribution error. And yet, if you really trust the person and you understand something about them, you know that they're they intend to be doing the right kind of thing, but something must have come up. You're much more likely to be forgiving of people that you see every day than people you see occasionally, and you want to make that difference disappear. That, you know, if even though you have your communication covenant, if Joe misses a meeting and he forgot to tell us he wasn't going to be there, I'll say, you know, I could, on the one hand, I could say, well, Joe doesn't care about us. That would be not very good for the team. Or I could say, oh, you know, something must have come up. I know he's a busy person. He's got a lot of responsibilities. You know, we'll overlook it this time. So that's the kind of the role that trust plays in this whole process, and it really is critical. And as I say, trust is going to be really important when things get tough.
Yeah, I remember attending a lecture by someone whose name I've forgotten, but he was at the time the director of, I think it was IBM's Knowledge Management Institute. And his point was, trust is the greatest source of efficiency in everything that we do.
Yep.
He was saying, you know, I have a whole bunch of staff that report to me. They're on the road 40 weeks a year traveling. In theory, I'm supposed to review everything they do and sign off on it. If I did that, I would do no other work.
Yep.
And, you know, he was viewing it as, you know, I'm going to teach these people that you behave honorably, because if I ever lose trust in you, your life will be miserable. Mm-hmm. But the flip side of that is you've got to invest in building that trust up front. And, you know, frankly, we do this in our own groups. We go out for happy hours. We bring in potluck lunches and other things. We have discussions where we solve the world's problems before lamenting that no one will listen to us. But it's not just a valuable investment. It frankly is making the human connection that makes a lot of the work rewarding.
And we have a lot of experience with this. A lot of courses now in universities have team projects, and we always require the students in these teams to do something social at the beginning. They actually have to document it, take photographs or something, so we know they've done something social. And it could be something as simple as eating your bag lunches together, or normally you'd eat in your office by yourself. You just get together and do it, or do something. Go to a play, go to a concert, go out to dinner, go play miniature golf. Just something to build up this trust that's going to be so important when that project gets going.
So as we wrap up discussing building common ground, I think one of the key messages here is common ground is not just that intellectual common ground, that I know what you mean when you say virus, so I know if you're talking about a computer virus or a cold virus. Common ground is also that set of shared knowledge of each other and experience that allows us to have the trust so that we spend our energy working together rather than checking up on each other, right, and worrying about whether somebody's about to stab me in the back.
Well, and trust can be vulnerable. I mean, if you break someone's trust, it's going to take a lot of work to build it back up again. So it's a really valuable commodity.
So building on that, our next lecture is going to be on project and relationship management. But this has been Lecture 8 of Technology-Supported Collaboration, bridging the vocabulary gap and building common ground.